Hello, everyone, and welcome back to today's Training Industry Leader Talk, Building Leaders at Every Level, sponsored by Lone Rock Leadership, Tenor, InfoPro Learning, Hemsley Fraser, and CLS. I'm Emma, a marketing associate here at Training Industry, and I'm thrilled to have you with us here today. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping items to go over to help you interact with our speaker and get the most out of today's program. Throughout today's event, please feel free to use the chat for comments and submit questions in the Q&A panel. All questions will be addressed during the event or at the end of the program during our Q&A section. Once the session ends, a brief survey will open in your browser, so please take a moment to share your feedback about today's session and the speaker. And as always, all of our sessions are being recorded and will be archived on trainingindustry.com. And you will receive a follow-up email from us, the link to the on-demand sessions. If this is your first Training Industry event, we'd like to welcome you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's Leader Talk, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, our podcast, and more. We would also love to hear about what you've learned from today's session on social media, so please follow us on your favorite platforms and let's continue the conversation. And now, without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker, James Cross, co-founder of Tenor. James has dedicated his career to unlocking human potential with technology. He was previously Vice President of Strategy at Workday, where he worked with many of the world's largest companies on their talent and learning strategies. James, it's great to have you with us here today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Emma, and thanks everybody for joining today. Excited for the conversation. And also welcome to Sarah's cat, who I see just walked on the keyboard right now. The cat is very welcome to contribute to the conversation today. So quick introduction. My name's James, co-founder of Tenor. I'll be sharing a lot today about AI and leadership and why we think it's such an exciting time for these technologies right now and how we support and enable our people. I'm based in San Francisco, but as you can probably tell from the accent, not originally from here. I've been in the US for coming up to 10 years now, and originally from the UK. And as Emma mentioned, was previously VP of Product Strategy at Workday for about 8 years. I learned a lot there about kind of how the world's best companies are approaching training and learning and how we can build new technologies to support them. But what we're here to talk today about is AI and leadership. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can walk through a few slides just to give a sense of how we think about the space and why I personally think it's such an exciting time and how these technologies can start showing up and how we enable and train our people and our managers. So quick introduction to Tenor. It's our goal to make every employee and every manager more effective at the world's best companies. We were founded in 2023, founded by, as I mentioned, former Workday leaders, and we're headquartered in San Francisco, but we have amazing folks throughout the US. And first of all, before we jump into the kind of program itself, I just wanted to check in with a few poll questions to see where folks are at in running programs for their folks today and how AI is showing up in them. So first question, do you run programs for your managers today? And we have a few different options ranging from not currently doing it to planning to do it to running maybe informal programs to maybe running more formal structured named programs. So if we could throw up the poll, we'd love to just get a sense first of who's running specific programs for their managers today. Well, this is great. Love to see these coming in, and thanks so much for the engagement here. This is great to see. We'll just give folks a few more seconds.
All right.
Okay, great. So what I'm seeing here kind of reflects what I hear as I speak to many companies. When we look at the poll numbers here, we have 45% of folks who are running formal programs today, 25% who are running more informal ad hoc programs. We've got 18% of folks who are planning right now to launch some programs. Really exciting time to be launching new programs now as we have these new technologies available. We have 12% of folks, 7 folks on the call who currently don't run programs and aren't planning to. So that's great to hear. And that gives us some interesting insights as we go into the conversation today. And then just wanted to ask a follow-up question to this, which is, for those of you who are running programs today, Where are you at in terms of bringing AI to those programs? So are you just generally curious about that today? Are you actively exploring AI solutions and how you can bring AI and these new technologies to your programs? Maybe you're actively piloting, bringing AI to those programs in a small way and testing and learning, or maybe some folks are actually using AI in those programs kind of in production in the wild today too. So again, we'll just give folks a couple more seconds to add their responses as well. And it's great to see these coming in. So right now it looks like curious and actively exploring are taking the lead. We'll just give folks a few more seconds to add any additional votes here. Great. Well, thanks again for participating. We're seeing here that around 40% of folks are very curious about the technology, which I'm guessing is why many folks are on the call today. Then we have 30% of folks who are actively exploring, 9% are piloting, and actually a fair number of folks, we have 21% of folks, which is 11 people on the call today, who are actively using AI in their programs today already. So that's really great to see. And again, this broadly reflects really accurately what I'm hearing as I work with many, many companies and speak to lots of L&D and training and talent and HR folks. That there's just so much curiosity. And I think as I speak to a lot of people, there's this kind of sense of FOMO that people feel like they need to be doing more. But at the same time, there's a sense of overwhelm that when you go to conferences, you're hearing people just yelling at AI at you at every booth, and the technology is moving so fast. So this is generally what we hear, that people are really curious, really excited, but also there's just a lot of noise out there, and the technology is moving so fast that it's kind of difficult to know where to start or where the best approaches are and the most impactful ways to roll this out. So thanks again for participating. This is really helpful as we go through the session today. And before we dive into the main content, just want to highlight, please do ask your questions as we go through. And we'll be keeping an eye on those. And we do have some time at the end for Q&A as well. So we can answer any questions that the group has. And any questions that we can't address live in the Q&A, depending on how much time we have, I'll personally follow up with folks by email as well. So with that, we'll continue with the content. Let me just move this out of the way. Great. So I personally think it's the most exciting time ever in workforce development and how we enable our people. And I've been like a lifelong learning nerd, started my career as a high school teacher and then got into online learning for the workforce. And in my whole career, I think this is the most exciting time ever. And I think for us kind of talent and training and learning folks, we already know what works. So we know that role plays work, but previously they've been things we've just been able to do as one-off experiences. They're sometimes kind of awkward when you're doing it with maybe peers or when you're doing it with an actor in some cases. We know that one-off feedback works really well. We know that it's great when you can fly people in for one-off programs and initiatives, but often they're just obviously one-off experiences and they're things you can't do for everybody and they're things you can't do too often. And also we know that executive coaching, of course, works really well, but that's probably one of the most expensive things we can do on this list. And so that's been typically reserved for a chosen few executives or high potential folks across an organization. And even then, it was something you usually just did for specific sprints during change moments and wasn't something that was kind of regularly available to everybody. So we know what works, and there's this feeling across the industry that we want to do more of what works, but we've been held back from that by the constraints of this in the past. And that's really what's changed over the last year or so, almost overnight. That now with AI, we can actually start to bring some of these approaches to everybody across the workforce in a way that's really scalable, really cost effective, and also in a way that's often more effective than the previous ways that we did things, especially when it comes to things like role plays. So we're now able to use AI and specifically voice AI to bring role plays to folks in the moment of need, in the flow of work, in a way that enhances programs. We can also bring feedback into the mix that actually helps the individual to grow their skills and capabilities, but also that's reinforcing your best practices and how you want folks to be showing up in these moments and reinforcing your playbooks and scripts for folks as they go through these role plays and coaching moments. And also, most excitingly, we can now start to offer coaching for everybody in a way that's really effective and in a way that wasn't possible before. Again, using AI to deliver in the moment coaching in a safe and secure way, and also in a way that's constantly reinforcing and being grounded in your company's best practices and approaches and culture and so on. So really exciting time in the space right now. especially for folks who are either running existing programs, where you can essentially layer on some of these new technologies to existing programs to make them more impactful and to create overall more kind of experiential and on-demand learning experiences. And also for folks who are thinking of launching programs, so you can actually start from scratch in this new paradigm and start to bring these technologies to those from day one. So really exciting time for us all in workforce development and L&D and training right now. And really, the way that all of this technology comes together is allowing kind of practice with voice AI characters. And today we'll actually be taking a quick look at what prompting looks like and giving you some AI prompting tips for those of you who are testing the water and thinking about building AI role plays. Also starting to bring in AI coaching as well that kind of reinforces your best practices and helps people in the flow of work. I can talk a little bit about analytics too, and how we can actually start to tell that data story for how engagement with an AI coach or engagement with AI role plays then starts to have a real business impact, bringing it together with other data. And the technology underneath plays a really important part of that. That's really the enabler for all of this. So I wanted to give folks a quick primer today on how these technologies are really showing up to enable these new kinds of experiences. We'll be spending some time with voice AI, which I think is one of the most kind of exciting areas of AI technology development right now. And I'll also spend a little bit of time just talking about safe enterprise AI. I think another thing that's really exciting about this time is that L&D and training and talent and HR are actually in many of the world's biggest organizations at the front end of bringing these brand new technologies to their organizations. And that means that as you do this, you're having to interact with IT, security, legal sometimes, and work through a process with this new technology to actually bring that to your people. And just wanted to give a few tips today on if you're thinking about maybe bringing AI into your organization, into your learning and training programs, how you can effectively partner with your friends in IT and security and legal to make that happen too. So these are some of the things that we'll be covering today. And I did just want to cover some top use cases that I'm seeing across the industry for how folks can actually bring these technologies to their programs and to their people and managers and leaders. So I'll talk through a couple of these. The first, as I mentioned, is where you have existing programs in place or you're designing new programs and you want to build like experiential learning and practice into those programs to help people actually take what they learned and practice it and bring it to their real world environments. So that's one really exciting way. Another really exciting area that we're seeing is frontline manager enablement, where maybe if you're in a frontline environment like kind of retail, where you've got folks in the field who are in very dynamic environments, having to manage people day to day, even interact with customers, interact with vendors in a very dynamic environment without direct HR support day to day. Many retailers run kind of manager programs or manager academies. And actually, these are the folks who can most benefit from these practice opportunities, given that they work in such dynamic environments in the field. So frontline manager enablement is something we'll take a look at today. And also, I'll bring together performance cycle prep and organizational change moments. Really, any moment where you have like change moments or HR events across the company where you know that a bunch of managers are going to be having similar difficult conversations around the same time, and you want to enable them for that. And lots of companies will put out kind of enablement materials. They might put out conversation guides, training materials in the LMS or HRIS for these. But often then when it comes to those difficult conversations, whether it's a reorg or a re-architecture or a performance cycle or compensation chat, all of that prep goes out of the window when they're in the moment having that difficult conversation, and giving people practice that reinforces your best practices ahead of time is the best way to really prepare them for that. And also just building a culture of accountability. I think right now, lots of managers are being expected to do more with less or more with the same amount of resources on their teams, or maybe they've got more directs, or we're often seeing like a flattening of the org chart in some industries too. That creates a lot of changes for managers and how that works, and really allowing them to continue to lead in this changing environment is something that's really important too. So excited to dig into some of these examples and give you some real world examples of these today. But first, I wanted to jump into a quick overview of how the technology actually works in practice. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and share a different screen. And I wanted to just give you a sense today of what it's like as a training or L&D person to actually build some of these technologies and actually use AI to prompt and create some experiences for your people. So I won't be giving a full demo or anything today, but what I do want to do is just jump in and show you how easy it is to actually prompt and create some of this content. So I've jumped into Tenor here. I've jumped into the library. And as you can see, we have 250 different simulations there that have been built out. This is all customizable. But what I wanted to do today is actually build a custom scenario from scratch. So I'm going to show you two scenarios today that look a little different and touch on different parts of the workforce and different conversation types. So first, we're going to have one of I think of the most dreaded conversations for managers, which is having a pay conversation where you've got a good person on your team who's gunning for a promotion or is expecting a raise this time around, but really due to factors outside your control as a manager, the budget just wasn't there to do that for them this year. And you want to keep them engaged, let them know their values with the company, but also deliver the news that they're going to be a little bit disappointed today. So I'm going to go ahead and create a scenario just for this. So I will pick a character here and we will pick a voice.
Hello and welcome to Tenor.
I'm going to call him Josh, and he is going to be a marketing manager today. We'll click on next. And then we're going to pick how the character relates to me or to the person doing the simulation if we're building it for others on our team. So in this case, he's going to be my direct report, but we also have different organizational relationships here. And also we have customer-facing simulations as well, if you wanted to train people who are maybe interacting with customers in the field and following your playbooks. But today it's going to be a direct report. Then I'll click on next. And this is the fun part. We get to design the character we'll be speaking to in the conversation. Now, I want to make it a little entertaining for you, and also I want you to see the character put me on the spot a little bit and make me kind of a little bit nervous and make me sweat over here. So I'm going to make him a pretty assertive guy. I'm also going to make him extremely reactive so that when I deliver this news, I'm almost kind of thinking ahead to the learning goal I want the manager to get from this conversation, where I'm going to be telling him this news today. And I don't want him to make life easy for me. I'm in a psychologically safe space. It's an AI. It's only me and the AI that are going to see what I've said to it. So I wanted to push back and I wanted to ask some tricky questions about process. I wanted to make me feel a little bit bad about it, really so I can practice having this conversation before I go do it in the real world. So with that, I'm going to make him fairly neutral on the happiness scale, given that he's coming in not quite sure what to expect today. And then just for fun, given it's a pay conversation, I'm going to add in some extreme anxiety, like most of us would have coming into this kind of conversation today. So I'm going to do some prompting now, and I'm just going to be using simple natural language to create a very simple prompt for this character. So you can see here, I've said Josh is a long-time dedicated employee. He's a mid-level performer. I've said that he's solid on the team, but he's not one of our rock stars that maybe this year we're really differentiating for in terms of compensation. And also here I've said he values transparency when we talk about compensation, and he expects detailed explanations. So you can see in a very simple way, I'm kind of setting it up to align with that learning goal, which is for him to ask some questions about the process, really dig into things, really expect transparency in the process behind the scenes. And just to make life a bit more difficult for myself, I'm going to add a few extra details. So I'll say he compares himself to his colleagues, to his peers when it comes to pay and promotions, like most people do. He's going to push back a bit if he feels that other people are getting promoted and he's not. And I might also say that he's been wanting a senior manager promotion for some time and is getting impatient about when this will happen. And of course, he's not going to get that promotion today. So I'm setting up a bit of natural disappointment. And finally, I'll also just create some guardrails for how this character is going to interact with me. So I want him to be reactive, but I do generally want him to be professional, of course. And we've got some guardrails built into the platform overall, but you can further tweak that. So I'm going to say he's always professional, but if he feels he's not being heard, he can push back and get defensive. So I've also set up some guardrails for really how I want this character to be pushing back. So very simple prompting here. This is something that translates to any simulation platform you might be exploring or using. And it's also true for any other AI platforms you might be working with too. You can just put these very simple prompts in. And the key here as learning and training folks is to just think about the learning outcome and build the character and the prompt to align with that. So I'm going to click on next. And then we describe the situation we're encountering with Josh. Again, this is all in natural language. So I'm saying that this is Josh's annual performance and compensation conversation. This year, things have changed a little due to economic uncertainty. Budgets are lower, but this year, Josh won't be receiving a salary increase, and he's coming to this conversation expecting an increase. So I'm going to say also been he's also not getting the senior manager promotion he's been expecting and working towards. Apologies for my typos here. So very simple prompts. And now I've simply just put in a business goal, which is to communicate the news, explain the reasoning, and reassure him of his value to the team. We have some other options here that we can use for different types of simulation, but I'm going to leave this as is. And then I want to jump into the simulation and show you how the voice experience works. And then I can talk through how AI can then help us to tailor the feedback to reinforce company values. So I'm going to click on preview a scenario, click on start practice, and then we'll jump in and have a chat with Josh. And what I want you to keep an eye on here is how the prompts we put in just now kind of develop into the character we're about to speak to give you a sense of how that prompting works. So right now it's spinning up Josh for the first time, and I can click on start practice and go have a conversation with Josh. So you can see him put me on the spot right now. And probably, I will say I still get nervous when I do this. I've obviously done this a lot of times, but the characters can be very persuasive. They can make you feel bad. The voice is very realistic. You have to think on your feet. So you see that just now. So I'll bring up Josh.
Hey, James.
Hey, Josh, good to see you. How's it going? How's your week going so far?
Hey, James. I'm doing all right, thanks. Weekend was pretty quiet, honestly. Just caught up on some family stuff. How about you?
Yeah, weekend was quiet too, and yeah, just having a good week here. How's the weather where you are right now? Is it still a bit gloomy and rainy over there?
Yeah, it's been a bit miserable, honestly. Just gray skies and rain, pretty much all weekend and today. Makes it hard to feel motivated, to be honest. One of those weeks, I guess.
Yeah, well, hopefully that'll pick up soon.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I could definitely use a little sun. Anyway, I guess we're here to talk about performance and comp, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I've been looking forward to catching up today, Josh. First of all, how do you think this year's gone so far?
I think it's been decent, honestly. I've kept the campaigns on track, hit my targets, jumped in on the cross-team project, and got solid feedback from partners. I'm always looking for areas to improve, but I feel like I've been steady and reliable all year. What's your perspective?
Totally agree. I think you've met your goals this year. I've heard some good feedback on cross-functional projects and from other leaders, and you're just a really valued member of the team, Josh. So thank you for everything you've done this year.
I appreciate you saying that, James. Honestly, I try to give it my best, and I value the team too. I guess just being upfront, I'm hoping that effort's going to be reflected when we get to comp and next steps, especially given what we talked about last year around moving up.
Well, definitely. Well, first of all, I really appreciate your contributions this year, Josh. Happy to talk about the comp side of things, but I do want to share, there's some economic uncertainty right now and budgets have been a bit lower this year across the board. I advocated for you, Josh. You're a really valued member of the team, but this time we couldn't make that raise or that promotion happen. And I know that's disappointing news to share.
Wait, so just to make sure I'm hearing you, there's no increase at all? And nothing on the promotion either? Honestly, I'm a bit surprised. Last year, we were talking about a clear path to moving up, and I know I've hit the targets you and I agreed on. I get the economic uncertainty, but it's tough not to feel like all that work isn't being recognized right now.
Totally hear you, Josh. I think lots of people are having difficult conversations this year. This isn't due to performance, it's just due to budgets being lower. I think there are ways we can continue helping you build your skills and career and work towards that promotion. And hopefully it's something we can address in the mid-year cycle later this year.
I get that budgets are tight, but honestly, I've been hearing versions of wait until next cycle for a while now. I don't know, James. It kind of feels like moving the goalposts. It's hard not to look at other people moving up or getting bigger increases and wonder why I'm stuck. What's the actual criteria here? Because from my side, it seems like I'm meeting what's expected, but the result's always not yet.
So I'll pause that there. But you can see he did a few things there. He flowed with the conversation, and the conversation, because AI is a little different every time, you really don't know what you're going to get. So you have to kind of think on your feet and react. You can see also just how far the voice technology has come in the past few months, where now it's a very realistic back and forth conversation with no real gaps in the conversations, and you really have to kind of think on your feet and think in the moment. But also, he was very realistic in how he pushed back there, and this is something that AI has gotten really, really good at. He was persuasive. He told me how he felt about things. He made very good arguments that, hey, I've been told over the past few years I'm up for this promotion. I keep getting told not this time around. What's happening? He also started to dig into the process a little bit. So for me, as a manager, I think what you see a lot of early career managers do is point to leadership, point to the economy, point to the process, and not really take ownership in the moment and work through it with that person. And he wasn't letting me get away with that. So I really have to get good here at articulating things and working through it with him before I go have this conversation in the real world, which really is the way that we kind of build that muscle memory. So I'll talk through some feedback here. So you can see some strong points and areas for improvement. I got a score of competent there. Definitely some big areas for improvement for me as his manager. What I'm going to do here is actually jump into the tips screen, which is my favorite. And this shows me the conversation I just had with the character. And it also shows me some tips and areas I could have done better. So here I got some praise for I opened by asking him to assess where he'd been at in terms of his contributions this year, reinforced his strengths, gave some specific examples. But here I've got a tip, which is when he expressed feeling discouraged and asked about fairness. I didn't really engage with that. I just gave a hand wave of response and talked about like maybe next year, Josh, and we can help you build your skills and career. So definitely some areas for improvement here. And I will say this is just out of the box feedback. What AI is able to do now is actually tailor this feedback so that it's naturally reinforcing your playbooks and your best practices for how you want folks to be having these conversations. So it's naturally kind of reinforcing it. And this is why I think this technology starts to create that kind of perfect learning experience that we've all been wanting for so long, where you have a very emotive and very engaging, like realistic conversation or experience. Then you get immediate feedback after that that reinforces how your company wants you to be kind of showing up and best practices for that conversation. And then you get to do it again and put that into practice and see your skills grow over time, naturally reinforcing the best practices each time, and then go have that conversation in the real world. So it starts to get us towards that kind of perfect circle of like a really great experiential learning experience. And hopefully this gives you a sense of just why I'm so excited about this kind of technology. Did want to quickly show you just the breadth of what this AI can do when it comes to these types of conversations. So we'll go have maybe a little bit of a different conversation now, maybe relating to a frontline employer. So I'm going to go find a scenario for somebody who's been late a lot, and then we can actually go and have that conversation. So I'm going to click on chronic lateness. And you can see here we need to give some feedback to Andrew, who has been regularly arriving late to work and meetings without any explanations. And I need to let him find out what's happening, give him an update on why it's so important to the company, and really work on some solutions together. But what I actually want to do is go customize this. So right now, Andrew is maybe a call center representative, but I'm going to say he's a cashier. That's a large grocery chain. So I can take this as a kind of basic outline and then start to adjust it. And I'm going to say Andrew is a cashier. So very, very kind of simple overview. And I've just customized that to be more of a frontline example. So it's customizing this right now. And I'll go just have a quick conversation. So you can see me be put on the spot again and have a little bit of a different conversation in a different type of environment. And you'll see as well with this character, with the previous character, we built him to push back and be quite assertive. Of course, that's not always the case. And we also want to train people. There are going to be some people you speak to who are maybe a little bit more withdrawn. Maybe you have to work with them a bit more. Maybe they shut down a little bit when they get bad news. And so we're starting to show the breadth of the characters here.
Hey, James.
Hey, Andrew, good to see you. How's your week going so far?
Hey, James. It's been all right, honestly. You know, same old, just keeping busy and all that. How about you?
Yep, week's going well. Hey, Andrew, just wanted to share some feedback. I've been looking at the attendance and speaking to some folks on the team, and I've noticed you've been late for your shift a few times this week. You're a valued member of the team. Just wanted to check really if there's anything happening that we could help with or anything I need to know about the lateness.
Yeah, I figured this was going to come up. Honestly, I don't really see it as a big deal. I mean, I pretty much always catch up with my tasks, and being 10 minutes late here and there hasn't messed anything up as far as I can tell. I just feel like rushing or stressing over clock time puts me in a weird headspace, if that makes sense. But nah, nothing's really going on. Is it really causing problems for the team?
It is, when you're late for your shifts, it means other folks have to cover for you. It means that folks can't take their breaks on time. And also, it has an impact on customer experience. And you know that we have very strict policies around clocking in and attendance. So it is something that we need to see a big improvement on, Andrew.
I get what you're saying, but I guess from my perspective, 10 minutes just never felt like that big a disruption. But I get if it throws off breaks and messes up the flow for other people. It's just not something I've noticed directly, you know? It's honestly not personal. I just work better when I'm not stressing about the clock. But I can see why everyone's been annoyed, just not totally sure how to get myself to care about on the dot when it doesn't feel like it affects my work much.
So I'll pause that there. But you can see a very different type of conversation. He's still pushing back a little, but he's pushing back in maybe more of a less assertive way. And he's just really questioning why we need this from him. So that's a bit more of a difficult conversation to jump into. That's kind of difficult in a different way. And you can see the feedback here. Um, don't have a time to go into a lot more today, but hopefully that's just giving you a good sense of the prompting and how the AI and how the technology works. For those of you who are like running programs or thinking about programs, some of this technology is most valuable when it's actually baked into your programs. So you can create those custom scenarios to map to different modules or different outcomes for your program curriculums, embed them into your LMS or HRIS or wherever you're delivering those programs, or even build kind of learning paths inside of the application itself to align with them and assign these. And it's very, very quick and easy to build these into your programs to make them more effective. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and jump back into my deck for a few final slides. And if you do have any questions, we'll be moving to Q&A in just a few minutes. So please feel free to ask those in the chat, and we'd love to answer any questions that you have. And then just wanted to highlight why I think this type of technology is so great for like talent and learning teams. I think like when I speak to a lot of L&D and training and talent teams, it's often like a small lean team of like really passionate folks who are looking to have as big an impact as they possibly can across the business. And I think this technology starts to be a force multiplier for learning and talent and training teams, where you can start to really have that impact supported by these new tools in a way that was never possible before, kind of supporting people at critical moments in the flow of work, and also driving that behavior change and driving that consistency across the business. Well, like many times you'll know that you have playbooks or best practices or ways of working that if people followed more consistently, it would be great for the business. And there's been a kind of missing link until now in actually translating training people on those approaches and then seeing that behavior show up in the real world. And I think that missing link is where this kind of AI technology shows up today in seeing that real world business impact. And just wanted to make it real with a few very specific real world examples of how this AI technology can help. The first, and these are from real companies. So the first is with a large biotech and pharmaceutical company where they had like a reorg and a re-architecture happening where people were having job levels changed across the company. They were valued people, they wanted to keep them, but they knew they were going to have maybe 300 difficult conversations across the company for people who were impacted. And they wanted to find ways to really help their managers feel prepared for those conversations. And they were able to build out a menu of different conversation types relating to different situations and different job title changes that their managers could actually go practice as many times as they wanted before they went and had those conversations. They saw a big uplift in retention and satisfaction in the conversation from folks whose manager had been through this training compared to those who didn't. Another, as I mentioned, is frontline store manager training, where you've got store managers who are out in the field doing a great job in very challenging and dynamic circumstances, having to think on their feet and follow playbooks and processes. And we've been able to work with a number of retailers to really help them make their academies and store manager training stick and really make them feel more confident having these conversations back in their stores and in the real world after those experiences. And finally, working with some technology companies around performance cycle enablement. And I think when you have pay and performance cycles, in their own words, there's like a million things that can go wrong when you've got hundreds or thousands of managers having performance and pay conversations, especially when there are changes to the process or changes to pay or compensation. So this is a really great way to prepare people for those moments. Before we jump to Q&A, hopefully you got a good sense today of how the technology kind of shows up and how it works. We have L&D folks on staff who love kind of building out custom scenarios. So what we're offering for folks on the call today is if you would like us to build out a custom role play and send you a link to that you can try for yourself, just based on the industry you're in and any public information we can find in your company, just let me know here and we will reach out with those in the next couple of days. And that will just be a link that we'll share with you. You'll then be able to try it for yourself and also share it with any colleagues who might want to try it out as well. So if you'd like to do that, just let us know, yes, please, and then we'll be happy to do that for you too. So I'll just give folks another few moments just to complete that too. Well, that's great. And I'll also share my contact details right at the end as well for any additional folks. So we'll go ahead and close that poll in just a few seconds. Excellent. So we'll close out that poll. And then I would love to move to Q&A in the last just under 10 minutes that we have. So yeah, if you mind kind of relaying some of those questions, Emma, that'll be awesome.
Sure. We had a lot of conversation going on in the chat, but I did find a couple things. This one is from Giovanna. James, any wisdom to share with people getting fed up with AI work slop? The reality is many people are getting fed up with chat GPT-ified images and content, and it's impacting credibility. Is it more quality control, selecting better vendors?
Yeah, really good question. And I think this is something we're going to see more and more of as people start to rely and over rely on AI tools. The way I think of it with my team, and just speaking from personal experience, I encourage folks to not kind of use AI for the end output, but to use AI for the research and planning and as a thought partner as they prepare that output. So I think some of it as managers and leaders is creating expectations for how folks should use these tools to let them know like the most impactful way. And also to let them know that there are expectations around not just over relying on AI. And I think this is something as managers that we're all going to have to evolve around as we kind of set expectations for our teams over the next few years, because I think we're seeing a lot of this, and I think it's only going to get worse, I guess, as people start to over rely on these tools. So really good question, and that's something that I've been working through with folks on my team as well right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here's one from Steve, and this kind of goes back to you're showing the AI agent and the amount of detail and context that you can provide. Even though the box says to add a sentence or two, can you provide as much detail to the scenario as you want, and will the AI factor all of it in?
You can. Just for the demo today, I put a very brief one in. But like with all prompting, you kind of get out what you put in, and you can get very nuanced and detailed, even building in kind of if the person kind of brings this up or asks this question, you should respond like this. And you can also bring in a lot more context about the business and best practices for that too. We actually run a monthly workshop webinar from our L&D experts on how to effectively prompt for L&D folks. So that's something that we can share in the follow-up as well, if anybody would like to check that out.
Excellent. Here's one that just came in from Jessica. I work in the healthcare staffing space. Do you have a tool that you can upload a call and then provide call coaching? So maybe looking at an existing conversation.
We do, yeah. So you can upload a call recording and it will actually give you the same feedback that you would receive from the kind of role plays that we saw before. And for those of you who also have one-on-ones on Teams or Zoom calls, and so on, you can also invite the kind of agent into those calls and give you that same feedback for your real life conversations as well. Yep.
Cool. So how do you make sure that AI coaching stays aligned with your company's specific leadership philosophy and feedback frameworks?
Yeah, good question. So the first is in the AI coach, you can actually set up off-limits topics where there are areas that if somebody brings that up with the coach that it won't engage on, and it's going to be referring them to their manager or to their HR team. And also you can bring in any of your documents that are really, so if you have specific guides on specific types of conversation, HR policies, guidance, company values, you can bring in pretty much anything and just upload it, and the AI will read through that and then ground its responses and its coaching in that. That's something we help our customers with, but it's very easy to do. And the AI can really ingest anything that you have relating to that. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, here's one more. We have invested a lot in leadership development programs, but we still struggle with the behavior change after the training ends. How does the AI coaching help bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think this is actually where it's most powerful, where like we work with many customers who have like very high profile academies for their leaders and leader workshops that they're spending millions or more on often. And they're great and they have a lot of kind of benefit and impact, but they find often that that one-off learning experience, when people go back to their environments, often it doesn't translate into real world impact or behavior change. So I think this is where these role plays specifically in coaching can really help with that, where you can layer AI on top of those existing programs so that while they're doing the program, they can actually put it into practice. And then after the program, they can continue to do practice and really put those skills into practice in different simulations in a really safe space. And we just know that that's how people learn best. It's through getting the repetitions in and getting the practice and getting that learning loop of feedback. So I think that's actually one of the most powerful areas for this technology.
Excellent. Okay, I have just one more question. So if y'all have any more, add them to the chat or to the Q&A panel. Here it is. What does adoption actually look like? How do you get busy managers to actually use something like this consistently?
Yeah, great question. The first is building it into your existing programs. I think that's often the highest and fastest impact way that you can get leverage from this technology. The second way is really showing up for managers with coaching and with these AI interventions in the moments that matter most. So we often sit down and do with companies we work with, we sit down and look at the year ahead and think, where are the moments where your managers are most likely to be a bit stressed out about a specific conversation, where they're going to be really receptive to any help they can get and show up for them in those moments. Even pinging them by email through Slack or Teams to let them know that this is available to them and building it into any enablement you already have for those moments that matter. So it's really those two things. It's like building it into your programs and then also showing up in those key moments that matter where managers really want the help. Because we, like as learning folks, like we know it's difficult to get people to come into new learning approaches and change their behaviors in that way, but it's more about getting it in front of them in those moments. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, James, that's all the questions that we have, and we're just about out of time. Thanks so much for being here. This was an excellent session.
Thanks so much. And thanks everybody for joining and for the engagement today. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me. My details are here. Always love to connect with folks on LinkedIn as well. And as I mentioned, there was a question on effective prompting and making that more specific and detailed. I'll also share to folks afterwards, if you're interested, we have a monthly webinar run by Lindsay, our learning experience designer and resident like AI expert wrangler that she runs. And that's just a general workshop on AI prompting for L&D that would be happy to invite folks to as well. It's a Zoom webinar once a month. And again, yeah, thank you so much for facilitating. And it's great to meet everybody today and really appreciate you joining and the engagement.
Great. All right, everyone. Thanks again for your participation in this session. We have a 15-minute break up next, and then we'll be hearing from Dan Rust and Nolan Hout from InfoPro Learning. You can join that next session by going back to the Zoom lobby and finding their session and click join. We hope to see you there. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.